Among the other things that the trustees do to while away their lonely hours is they endeavor to focus on one member of the sports media confraternity and to single that man or woman out for the conspicuous service and for the conspicuous dedication that they have given their chosen craft. To be a sports writer or a sports broadcaster today, irrespective of some popular opinion to the contrary, is indeed a noble profession. There is no truth to the rumor that most of the people in the broadcast business receive armored cars each and every weekend with their paycheck. But there was a time in the early part of the 19th century when people would not willingly identify themselves as sports writers. It was a rather tawdry profession. Who should rise to the challenge but a Columbia man? His name was William P. Hawes. Now, I don't know whether he was courageous or he didn't know any better. There's a school of thought for both, but clearly he was a Columbia man. And Mr. Hawes stepped away from the more hallowed fields of journalism and did in fact begin to report on what took place on the various playing fields in the New York area. Mr. Hawes brought a sense of quality, a sense of purpose, and he did herald the thing that most people, as they do today, either as practitioner or spectator, live as an integral part of their life, sports. So it is in honor of Mr. Bill Hawes that the trustees have created the William P. Hawes Award. Would seem reasonable. Who then to give this award to? The first year, the trustees in their eminent wisdom chose our friend and one of the strong supporters of the New York Sports Museum and Hall of Fame, and a lifetime friend of our president and founder, Bill Shannon, the Pulitzer Prize-winning sports writer for the New York Times, the splendid Dave Anderson, and he was clearly a noble choice. What do you follow Mr. Anderson with? A golf cart, more often than not, because that's where he likes to be found. But we felt it was only appropriate that this time around we select someone from the broadcast media, that glorified bunch of folks that Howard Cosell brought into the 21st century, because they were using crystal sets years back. And among all those who broadcast, there is a standard today. Many years ago, the standard was Tex Houston or Grantland Rice, certainly Red Barber and Mel Allen. And there have been numbers of men throughout the country, regionally, who we in New York never heard with any great exposure, Bob Prince, Jack Brickhouse, people like that. But thanks to network television, we have national standards today. If there is a standard in broadcast excellence, the recipient of the William P. Hawes Award this year is that standard. There's an incongruity to this standard. There are those who believe that there is a portion of him that looks like Dennis the Menace. He looks hardly old enough to be in the profession, yet can you remember when he wasn't? Ladies and gentlemen, we are delighted because he happens to be one of our friends who gives of himself unstintingly, who leaves his wife and two lovely children and makes time for us. And never, ever can we compensate him for it. That's a no-no. Not only for his generosity do we cite him, but we cite him as that standard of excellence in sports broadcasting. He has humor, a keen wit. He comes prepared. He does his homework. And he gives that slightly rounded opinion that you would expect of someone who you will spend a lot of time listening to and watching. I give you this year's winner of the William P. Hawes, my friend Bob Costas.
Mike, thank you for that gracious introduction. You'll all be relieved to know that after I make this brief acceptance, we'll move on to baseball, and that's the final list, and then you'll get to see and hear from Duke Snider. Anybody who is involved in a profession like mine has to count as blessings. You get to talk about people that you grew up thinking about, watching, You get to follow in the footsteps of a Red Barber, a Mel Allen, a Vin Scully, people like that. It's so much fun, but all of us, no matter how lucky we may be, have our humbling moments. We've all had our times on the air when we wish we could have crawled out of sight or had our words erased. But that's the thing about broadcasting as opposed to writing. No copy editor, no eraser on the back end of the pencil, no chance to reset the margin on the typewriter. For better or worse, you say it and it's over. Like the day I was broadcasting the baseball game of the week in Toronto with Tony Kubek about 5 or 6 years ago, and Oakland was playing at Toronto, and at that time Tommy John was trying to salvage his career. He was bouncing from club to club. He'd been with the Yankees once already. He'd come back a second time, and Oakland had just signed him, but they hadn't activated him. And he was sitting in uniform in the visitors' dugout in Toronto charting pitches, but they were going to send him out on a rehab assignment to kind of get him ready before they put him in the rotation. And the camera settled upon him, and I thought quickly as I saw Tommy John's face on the monitor, what kind of caption should I write beneath this picture? So I turned to Kubek and I said, Tony, there's Tommy John, 20-game winner with the Dodgers and the Yankees. Oakland thinks that he'll be in their starting rotation soon, but he's not quite ready yet, so he'll be pissing in Appleton on Monday. And I knew as I said this that there was something not quite right about it. Kubek looked at me wide-eyed but offered no help. About 5 seconds went by, dead air, which on national television seems like an eternity. And then I thought I was making matters better by saying, well, Tony, come to think of it, he'll probably do both if he stays there long enough. These sorts of things happen. I was in the back of the broadcast booth in St. Louis one afternoon. The Cardinals were playing the Cubs in St. Louis, the game being broadcast on KMOX. Jack Buck, the voice of the Cardinals, working with two partners then, Mike Shannon, the former Cardinal third baseman and outfielder, and Bob Starr, who now does the Red Sox game. So they're calling the game on the radio, and it's a midweek afternoon game, kind of a sparse crowd, and it happened to be National Dairy Day at Busch Stadium, which of course is one of your big promotional days. People flock from surrounding states for the colorful festivities. And there was a guy from the National Dairy Council who came up to the booth, and he was cavorting around picking up whatever citations he could from the Cardinals. And the guy brought with him a woman who was billed as Miss Cheesecake. And Miss Cheesecake was dressed in a one-piece white bathing suit with white high heels as if she was in a beauty pageant. But the streamer going across her, instead of saying Miss Wisconsin or something, said Miss Cheesecake. So Buck starts to schmooze with the guy from the National Dairy Council as the game hits a lull around the 6th inning, and he's half calling the game and half talking to the guy. Hope you've enjoyed your visit to St. Louis. Oh yeah, Jack, we love it. We don't see much of the National League since the Braves left Milwaukee. We got the Brewers in the American League now, but great to come down here and see you guys. There's a foul back to the screen, 0-1 to Ted Simmons. And the woman, Miss Cheesecake, all of a sudden comes sashaying down the steps to great notice all around the press box, and Buck describes her arrival, and she has brought with her 3 individual boxes of cheesecakes, like little 2-slice cheesecakes. And as the broadcast continues and Simmons flies out to right, she places one in front of Buck, one in front of Shannon, and one in front of Starr. And then she kind of, in mincing little steps, disappears to the back of the booth. Ken Reed steps in, hitting .276, and fouls one back to the screen. Buck leans across Shannon and says to Starr, "Hey, Bob, what do you think of Miss Cheesecake?" And Starr, apparently distracted, thinks he said, "What do you think of this cheesecake?" And he says, "I'll tell you, Jack, I'd like to try a piece of that right now." So you can see it's a noble profession, and one that I consider myself honored to be a part of.